Didn't you hear me? You're fired, you worthless high school graduate. Pack your things and leave the company immediately. You're like a parasite, lingering around here. It's utterly disgusting." Those were the words my father, the president of the company, said to me after I had dedicated 20 years to the family business since graduating high school. At first, I couldn't believe my ears, but it was clear he was serious. He wanted to hand the company over to Preston, his adored grandson who had just earned an MBA from Harvard. From now on, Preston will be the trainee director. Don't you understand that having his high school graduate aunt around would be a hindrance? Something inside me snapped. I'll pack my things and resign today. Goodbye. Ignoring my coworkers' attempts to stop me, I stormed out of the company. Little did I know, a week later, my father would call me in tears, begging me to return. My name is Blanca Lewis. In high school, I loved sports and lived with my father, Frederick, who ran a tax office, my mother, Maria, who handled accounting, and my academically gifted sister, Holly. Since childhood, I excelled at sports, joining various clubs, while Holly was gifted academically. We admired each other's strengths, making our bond unique. However, my parents had no understanding of sports and favored my studious sister. Even when I competed in long-distance events at the state level, my parents never came to cheer me on. But that didn't discourage me. No matter how much my parents disliked me, I knew results wouldn't betray me. The more I ran, the more confident I became in my growth. Because of this, I received offers from several universities for long-distance sports scholarships, but my parents, unable to appreciate the value of sports, opposed my college admission. Without their consent, I gave up on college and decided to join my parents' tax office right after high school, determined to make the most of the confidence I had gained through long-distance running. Given the shortage of staff, my parents practically forced me to join, but I was determined to prove them wrong. However, the hurdle was high. My years as a sports-oriented student made it difficult at first to handle taxes, with their complex numbers and laws, but my persistence from long-distance running helped me scrape by. After graduating high school, I moved out of my parents' home and began living on my own. This was also at my parents' insistence, thinking that as a working adult I shouldn't rely on them forever. "Sis, are you really leaving?" Holly, the only one who seemed sad about my departure, saw me off at the door on the day I left. "I'm sorry, Holly. Leaving you behind is my only regret, but I promise I'll keep in touch. And one day, come visit me. I'll be waiting." I gave Holly a reassuring smile, ruffling her hair to ease her worry. Unlike me, Holly was a bit shy and seemed like someone who needed protection. Leaving her alone in that house made me feel guilty. But since our parents were kind to her, I figured she'd manage. I thought if anything ever happens, I'll be there for her in an instant. Thinking I was acting a bit overprotective, I let go of Holly's head, said my final goodbyes, and left home. Several years after I left, Holly got married and Preston was born. Her husband was the son of my father's acquaintance, someone my father strongly recommended. As an aunt, I adored Preston and would often take him to the park on weekends. Preston became attached to me, and we shared a wonderful bond. However, as Preston grew older, my parents began to dote on him excessively. My father, in particular, had a strong desire to groom him as the successor. Preston was academically gifted and had always declared he would become a business leader. My parents placed high expectations on him, even interfering with Holly's parenting. Our weekend park outings gradually stopped as my father insisted that Preston focus on his studies. Over time, the distance between us grew. By the time Preston reached middle school, I was entirely sidelined. My parents were deeply invested in his tutoring and extracurriculars, hardly acknowledging my presence. Holly seemed apologetic, but I reassured her, saying, "It's fine. Preston's future is what matters." With my father's strong encouragement, Preston eventually secured admission to Harvard and entered the MBA program. High school graduates should just focus on work. That became my father's constant remark toward me. When he received the news of Preston's acceptance, I approached him with a handkerchief to dry his tears of joy, only to have it slapped away with those familiar words of disdain. The final blow came when my parents decided to attend Preston's enrollment ceremony, leaving me behind, uninvited. The antagonism was growing more intense. Holly apologized to me over the phone, but I assured her it was fine and that she shouldn't worry. I knew she was frustrated that she couldn't change our parents' behavior. I resolved not to trouble her further. I thought that if I could someday earn my tax accountant certification, my parents would finally acknowledge me. But contrary to my hopes, my parents' treatment of me grew colder. They began ignoring my greetings, and when I asked questions, they left them unanswered. "You don't even know that?" This is why high school graduates are useless. My mother often remarked, like a nagging mother-in-law. She sometimes even scolded me outright. Then, one day, a turning point arrived. I finally achieved my long-awaited tax accountant certification. After several years in the company, I decided to pursue the certification to build greater trust with our clients. To earn it, I had to pass 5 separate exams which could be taken over multiple years. Taking advantage of this system, I passed 1 subject per year, dedicating 5 years to achieve my certification and officially becoming a tax accountant. I first shared the news with Holly and Preston. Holly was thrilled, as if it were her own accomplishment. Preston sent a brief message, "Congratulations." With newfound motivation, I dove into my work wholeheartedly, and as a result, clients began to trust me more. Even outside business hours, I would promptly attend to clients' needs. "Thank you, Blanca. I'm so glad you're in charge," they would say, expressing gratitude with smiles that became my greatest joy. I never neglected prompt responses, and I enthusiastically accepted invitations to golf and barbecues, even on weekends. "You really work hard, don't you?" While enjoying a barbecue with our clients, my colleague, Elvin Wilson, looked at me and said this. It seemed he found it unusual that I actively participated in client interactions. I just did it because I enjoyed it. Elvin, on the other hand, wasn't particularly fond of gatherings like this. He was someone who would get attached to people he was close to, but when it came to professional relationships, he had a surprisingly detached side. Why did he even become a tax accountant? Still, that didn't change the fact that he was passionate. We got along well, and I knew he was someone I could rely on when it mattered. "What are you talking about? You're working hard too. You're here for the clients, after all. Come on, make the most of it and eat up. I've already had about 5 servings of meat. You're eating too much. Are you really a former long-distance runner?" Apparently, eating all that meat didn't make me look like an ex-long-distance runner. How rude. I'd always had a big appetite, but I held back when I was an athlete, I joked. Elvin and I laughed over these light-hearted conversations, bringing our clients into the fun and enjoying the barbecue together that day. As I continued spending days like this, building connections with clients alongside Elvin, I gradually became invaluable to them, and before I knew it, I had reached the top of the company's sales. With many major clients under my belt and the growth in revenue from my accounts, my efforts had finally paid off. "You did it, Blanca. Your hard work really paid off." "Thank you, Elvin. I guess I'll have to get serious and follow your example soon." "Were you not serious until now?" I couldn't help but tease him back, but I was genuinely touched by Elvin's congratulatory words. After that, I gained many more admirers apart from Elvin. I expanded my network both inside and outside the company, and each day felt more fulfilling and rewarding. However, my parents remained the same as ever. No matter how much I contributed to the company, their attitude was that it was only natural for me to give back, as they had allowed a mere high school graduate like me to join the company. At the company's celebrations, they handed out awards to top performers, but I was the only one excluded. Once again, I was filled with frustration at my inability to change my parents' hearts. Then, I received news that Preston had graduated from Harvard with excellent grades. He had completed his MBA and was about to return home. The thought of Preston returning home brought mixed feelings. He was once my sweet nephew, but now he has become the heir, carrying the full weight of my father's expectations. Still, as his aunt, I wanted to genuinely celebrate his return. My father was preparing to have Preston join the company immediately upon his return. "Preston will lead this company into the next era," he said, moving forward with the succession plans as if I didn't exist. Holly called me, sounding apologetic. "Sis, Dad is completely fixated on Preston. I tried to stop him, but don't worry about it. Preston probably doesn't even think about me." "No, that's not true. Preston really cares about." Before Holly could finish, I hung up. Thinking about Preston brought back memories of our times at the park. Back then, I never imagined things would turn out like this. Before long, Preston returned and joined my father's tax office. For his first year, he was granted the privilege of no overtime, and my father personally mentored him. Meanwhile, I continued with my usual routine of overtime and working on weekends. Even so, I carried on with my work diligently, earning the trust of our clients. "Blanca, we're truly grateful to have you here. I feel at ease when it's in your hands." The clients' words of appreciation became my support. Then, something unusual happened. My father organized a welcome party for Preston, and surprisingly, I was invited. "Looks like your folks are finally starting to recognize you," Elvin remarked. No way. In the reception-like venue, as I watched my parents talking to Preston, Elvin, who was sitting with me, leaned over and whispered that he thought maybe, just maybe, my parents were starting to recognize my efforts. I almost wanted to believe him, after all the hard work I'd put in. With that faint hope, I looked toward my parents, and unexpectedly, my father turned and met my gaze. After saying something to Preston, he started walking toward me. But little did I know that he was about to shatter every expectation I'd ever had. "Blanca, as of today, you're fired from the company." What? I couldn't believe what I was hearing, especially at a celebration like this. I thought I must have misheard. But as I looked at my father's face, there was no trace of a joke. What did you say? Didn't you hear me?" "I said you're fired, you worthless high school graduate. Pack your things and leave the company immediately. You've been clinging to this place like a parasite. It's disgusting." I wished it were a misunderstanding, but it wasn't. He was serious. The fact that he was genuinely trying to fire me pierced through me, and the more I thought about all I had worked for, the more the anger surged within me. For the first time, I let that anger out and confronted my father. "I've dedicated 20 years to this company, to you, ever since I graduated high school. Why, Dad? How could you treat Blanca this way? This is too much." Holly, who had also been invited, tried to intervene. "Preston will be taking over as the trainee director. Don't you understand that having his high school graduate aunt here would be an obstacle?" "Hey, that's going too far," Elvin interjected, clearly furious as he addressed my father. In all the years we'd worked together, I had never seen Elvin so angry. "Sir, no matter how much authority you have, there are things you should never say to your own child. And who do you think you are, speaking to me like this? I am the head of this tax office. What I say is absolute. Or, would you like to be fired along with her?" Even toward Elvin, my father was unyielding. If my presence was going to get Elvin fired too, then I. "Enough. Both of you." Something broke inside me, and I calmly stopped their conversation. Elvin seemed to object, but honestly, I wasn't absorbing any of it. "I'll gather my things and leave today. Thank you for everything." "Blanca, wait." "Sis." Ignoring Holly's call, I cast a final glance at my father and ran out of the venue, almost fleeing. It hurt to realize that no matter how hard I worked, none of my efforts had ever reached my parents. But with Holly and Elvin by my side, I didn't want them to see me in such a pitiful state. Maybe it was time for me to stop clinging to my parents' company and strive to make it on my own elsewhere. Perhaps all I could do was support Preston, my nephew. Maybe it wasn't my time anymore. I'd have to make sure to properly apologize to Elvin later. As I ran down the dark road back to the company, thoughts like these swirled in my mind, and I felt tears beginning to flow naturally. There was no use crying, but I was determined to turn these tears into strength. With that resolve, I stopped running, took out my phone from my pocket, and made a call. The next day, I went around saying goodbye to our clients. Each one expressed regret over my departure, and many insisted they wanted to follow me to my new job. However, poaching clients would be improper. Though I tried to politely decline, I couldn't stop clients who wanted to switch tax offices of their own accord. They firmly insisted they wanted me as their advisor, refusing to compromise. I was overwhelmed with gratitude. It touched my heart deeply, and with most of my clients deciding to follow me to my new office, I couldn't hold back my tears in front of them. Yes, as soon as my resignation was confirmed the previous night, I called Simon Foster, the director of a tax office I knew, and after sharing the whole story, he offered me a position. "It must have been tough for you. You'll be able to relax here. We'd be delighted to have you." Simon was incredibly friendly, and I remember pouring my heart out to him, even rambling about trivial things through my tears, but he simply nodded along, listening patiently. I recall how kind he was. "If your father treats you that way, feel free to consider me as your father figure instead." Even over the phone, his words felt more fatherly than my actual father's, and I gradually felt a resolve to work hard for him. And so, shortly after leaving my former position, I joined Foster Tax Office, setting out toward a new goal. After working there for a few days, I was progressing better than I had expected. With most of my former clients following me and the director's full support, both my income and status at Foster Tax Office had improved. Feeling Simon's confidence in me only increased my motivation, and I found a renewed excitement in my work. About a week later, after finishing work, I checked my personal phone and was shocked to see a slew of missed calls from my father. I was stunned, as I'd never received a call from him before. Listening to one of the voicemails, I heard a message stating that his tax office was suffering a massive client loss, putting their finances in jeopardy. "Preston's gone too, and the company is in danger. Do something. You still want to work at my company, don't you?" Hearing my father's self-centered plea, I immediately ended the voicemail. Honestly, I no longer saw him as a father. What caught my attention, though, was the mention that Preston had left, which worried me. I quickly called Holly, who answered sounding completely exhausted. Apparently, Preston had submitted his resignation, wasn't returning home, and was staying at a hotel. He had grown frustrated with my father's authoritarian management style and was planning to transfer to a different tax office. According to Holly, my dismissal led Elvin and the other staff members to quit en masse. Elvin. I hadn't even reached out to him, yet he must have. Out of consideration for me. Ending my call with Holly, I stared blankly at the list of missed calls from my father on my phone screen. With both Preston and Elvin gone, and the departure of the other staff and clients, it felt like the fate of my father's company was in my hands, but I deleted the missed calls from my phone and gently closed it. A few months later, Holly informed me that my parents' tax office had gone bankrupt. Due to the client exodus and the mass resignation of staff, my parents' tax office could no longer sustain operations and ended up closing. They had just taken out a loan to renovate the office, leaving them with substantial debt. With my father's reputation tarnished, it's unlikely any tax office in the industry would consider hiring him. I heard from Holly that my father now spends his days working labor-intensive part-time jobs, while my mother struggles with part-time retail work, scraping by as they try to pay off their debts. Well, I would have liked to say I heard that from Holly, but surprisingly, it was someone else who filled me in on my parents' situation. It was Elvin. Elvin, your whole vibe has changed, hasn't it? You look like a CEO now, and your suit looks a lot more expensive than before. Hey, you noticed? Actually, I won the lottery. $10 million. $10 million? Shay, keep it down. You keep it down too. When Elvin suddenly reached out and appeared before me, I was completely taken aback as he casually mentioned winning the lottery. He started off proudly, but soon his tone softened as he continued. The truth is, I used those winnings to start my own firm, Wilson Tax Office. I'm the director now, and all the staff from your father's company asked if they could join me. I think I finally understand what it means to be admired, like you are. Elvin. Living it up would have been nice, but I saw how hard you worked, so I couldn't just take the easy way out. So I became a director to take care of everyone properly and work alongside you, shoulder to shoulder. You're already a pretty respectable director. It's almost annoying that you're not acting like yourself. And working shoulder to shoulder? You're higher up than me now. Elvin, of all people. But I have to say, I don't dislike you. Falling for me, aren't you? I almost wrapped my arm around his shoulder to put him in a wrestling hold, but I decided against it. Instead, we put our arms around each other's shoulders and laughed together, looking forward to what life held for us. Afterward, I let Holly and Preston stay in my apartment while they recovered, keeping an eye on them as I continued working. As they regained their color and appetite over time, I invited them out for a meal at a restaurant one evening. There, the three of us finally had a long talk about everything. Preston shared that he'd grown increasingly disillusioned with my father's authoritarian management style and decided to resign after my dismissal. He couldn't endure the outdated practices that clashed with the management theories he had learned at Harvard. We had only been torn apart by our parents, but there was never any true animosity between us as a family. Although Holly and Preston had nothing to feel guilty about, talking about the past sometimes brought a shadow over their faces. But Holly apologized for all the hardship she felt she had caused me over the years. I tried to reassure her that none of it was her fault, but she was insistent. She was always so earnest, almost to a fault. Honestly, it terrifies me to think of what would have happened if you hadn't been there, sis. I don't think Preston or I would have regained our strength like we have. Well, I would have been devastated if you and Preston weren't doing well. But we're family, so maybe it's okay to let each other see our flaws a little more, don't you think? Sis. That said, I plan to drink a lot tonight, so take care of me if I get totally wasted. What? Wait, sis. I took a deep swig of the beer in front of me, exhaling with a loud phew. A bit dramatic, maybe, but I didn't want the two of them to hold back, especially after going through the trouble of bringing them to a restaurant. So, we shared drinks, laughing, and promised to move forward together as a close family of three. A few days later, I helped Holly and Preston join the foster tax office, where Simon welcomed them warmly. It feels like our strength has tripled. I'm counting on all of you. Let's not lose to our rival, Wilson Tax Office. Yes, sir. Since then, Elvin, along with his team, had been building his office's reputation, and before we knew it, Wilson Tax Office had become as well known as Foster's. Following Foster's competitive spirit, the three of us became even more motivated. As a united family, we pledged to work hard for the director and for our clients, determined to give our best every day.